All right, let's start the machine up again, everybody. We are on a Monday coming out of a bye week, heading back into a very important part of the schedule for Florida State football. And we're doing so here on the Monday Smash, presented as always by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. He's Irish O'Fell, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, Nick Carlisle, producing the show behind the scenes. Good evening, good sir. You ready to rev it up again? Here we go.
I am. I enjoyed the bye week. I'm not going to lie. It was nice to watch college football uninterrupted, be like everybody else for once. But now, ready to see the Noles again. And it's Kent State, huge favorites, but it's still good to see what this team looks like.
It is. I can't wait to watch them get back on the field. That was before they played Alabama, or the number one thing for all the events that we had with, viewers and listeners and even our own conversations. I said, I hope I wake up the Sunday after Alabama wanting to see them again and wanting to see how they grow, because last year was not like that. Every time you watched a game around the country, there was another thing you'd notice that you had noticed before about, well, Florida State doesn't do this well, or Florida State doesn't do that well. And now, Ira, watching teams that have single digits next to their names in the top 25 rankings this past weekend, you watch those games ago, they're not as good as Florida State in this regard or in that regard. They don't look as organized as Florida State in this category. It's been a lot of fun to watch what's out there, because we had it in the roundtable this weekend. Feels like Florida State can compete with just about anybody with this year's on this year's curve.
It's hard to even wrap your mind around what we watched last year. And we don't have to spend a lot of time dwelling on that. But, I just remember, I think it was around this time, or maybe like week 3 or week 4, that part of the year, where you started looking at statistics from other teams and going, well, so wait a minute, they have a player that's got 4 touchdowns. They have one single player that's got 200 yards receiving, and it's like it was the whole team output for the Noles. So, man, it's definitely again just a reminder of how quickly it all can turn. And again, just on that note, and I know we'll probably talk a little bit about it, but Tony White is being rumored as a candidate for the UCLA head coaching job, and again, a year ago, nobody on your staff would have been a candidate for anything. So. Again, just shows how quickly it can change.
Yeah, we could have played that game back in the day. What are they a candidate for? Some of these names that are on Florida State. But now I got to tell you, Ira, on that front, I'm a little annoyed, because I like what I'm seeing from Tony White. Love the press conference game, but you always wonder, is that just a podium thing, or when they actually get on the field, are you going to see the results of it? We can't get to September 15th without him being on a hot board. Yesterday, the 14th, he already is on the UCLA hot board. That's a little frustrating. I got to be honest. We got to worry about this now.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, I do think, when you look at UCLA, first of all, a lot of people in the media who cover college athletics will tell you that that's not a good job. And it is his alma mater. So that weighs into the equation, but it's not a good job. They've got a lot of financial challenges. They've obviously been struggling now going to the Big Ten, trying to get some footing there. Travel's a big issue for those California schools. I don't think that that's been a great experience so far for some of the schools in California. So, we'll see how it all plays out. But, the other thing I think you need to think about when it comes to, what UCLA is looking for is, generally when you make a coaching change, you try to replace what you didn't have in the last coach. So if the last coach was a defensive guy or an offensive guy, or maybe struggled in one area, you might go in the other area. Or if the last coach was really like a stickler for detail, maybe you want somebody who's a little bit more of a player's coach, or vice versa. If you had somebody who's more of a player's coach, maybe you want somebody who's more of a regimented, you're always trying to find the opposite. It's kind of like being in a rebound in a relationship. And so there's a lot of factors as to whether or not UCLA is going to target Tony White. He's an obvious candidate, but it's also, early in the season. You can fire people whenever you want, but that doesn't mean people are going to stop what they're doing when they're middle of a potentially great season and start having long conversations with you. So there's a lot of things that have to come into a play before we really get too concerned about it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the reality of the move, sure. And Lee says here, a cautionary tale for Tony White. I wonder why he would offer that. But Coach Tony does want to be Scott Frost 2.0. 100%. Yeah, that's the thing here. And the progress that he's making, Ira, Tony White, with Florida State this quickly, and we'll see if it continues down the trend it's on. You put together a resume a recent resume of Syracuse and Nebraska and Florida State, and you're seeing results that are off the charts for all three, you could aim higher than UCLA for your first head coaching gig. I think at that point, if I was his agent, that would be the thing I would say, heartstrings aside. But sometimes that nostalgic pull is strong. It just seems like, and I'll get your opinion on this. I mean, if Florida State continues to do what they've done so far, the attitude is there, the depth is there. They turn in a performance like that against a Miami offense that people are talking about as extremely impressive, and they look really good defensively that day. I mean, it feels like those upper tier P2 jobs might start looking at Tony White, even though he hasn't been a head coach before, for a job where you could win quickly and be in a situation that's more fertile than the one at UCLA reportedly is. Yeah,
it really depends on sometimes what you think is realistic and what the time frame is. And listen, man, there are some people. I know some people in the college coach headhunting game, people with search firms. That I remember talking to somebody when Alex Atkins was getting a lot of hype a couple years ago, and this person I was talking to said, if you can be a head coach and if you're hot right now, you need to go ahead and jump at it. And I think if you're Alex Atkins, maybe you have regrets that you didn't jump at something that may have come open maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because things don't always go the way you may think you're upwardly projected, or the trajectory is upward on a straight line, but you never know what's going to go what's going to happen in the future. So that weighs into it also. And that's what Tony White's agent and people around him will be telling him as jobs come open is, you can wait for the best job, and that makes sense. And I can certainly make that argument. But the argument against that is, well, you don't know what a year from now is going to hold. Well, you don't know what 2 years from now is going to hold. I will say this, from when I talked to Tony during the summer, he was really, really excited about working with Mike Norvell. I mean, he talked at length about, I was just going back reading some of that interview, and he talked about how this is before they've had any success this season. This was before the season started. He was just so excited to work with Mike Norvell because of the person he is, not just as a coach. He felt like Mike Norvell was helping him become a better coach and a better person. He also talked at length about how much he loved Florida. His wife has family in Tampa. He was born in Key West. Florida's where they've always come in the off season. So it feels like home to them. So there's a lot of things that, this isn't as cut and dry as, oh, he played at UCLA. The UCLA job is open. Obviously, he's going to go want to take that job. There's a lot of things that go into effect. And as you said, some of it is, what's your potential here? Can you get a power 2 head coaching job maybe in a year or two? But then there's some risk associated with that. So there's a lot of things he's going to have to consider whenever that time comes. Because again, we don't know that he's going to be even offered this job.
What we do know is it's a good problem to have at Florida State, that people want to hire your coaches and they want to hire them for the head job. That's the way it was early on in Mike Norvell's tenure. Kenny Dillingham obviously moved on, but then moved up quickly to bigger and better things, and then a playoff berth at Arizona State. Mike Norvell has a track record of that. It kind of went through a lull there, but now it looks like it might be back again to where Florida State's coordinators and assistant coaches are on some hot boards for different places throughout the country. I do want to weigh in as we're getting into Florida State content specifically here. Octavio says, I'm watching Inside the Seminoles right now. And thank you for watching us and having our volume up instead, Octavio. Mike secretly seems really pleased with the bye week practice. With what he went through, I imagine this isn't false hope. Thoughts? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, Ira, because he mentioned that today in the presser about the work that he saw, the extra bounce in their step after a couple of days off. What was your sense of how Mike Norvell thinks they've managed the last few days coming off of a 2-0 start?
Yeah, and so, as you said, right now Mike Norvell is having his own show down at Bowden's in College Town, so that is going on as well. You guys can watch that on delay. You can watch the replay of that. But that's how he was today at the press conference as well. So the way the schedule worked last week was they practiced Tuesday and Wednesday last week. He sounds very excited about how those practices went. You never know during a bye week. We gave that team so much credit for not just the way they came out against Alabama, but the way they came out against East Texas A&M. Well, now you go into a bye week, and is it as crisp as you want it to be? And he said, man, they really got after it on Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, they just did real hard workouts. They didn't do a practice. And then they got a couple of days off Friday and Saturday. Then they came back on Sunday for a practice. And the way the Sunday practice works, it's what they do during the season, is there's kind of a part, the first half of the practice is basically fundamentals, normal football practice stuff. And then the second half, they do a scrimmage for the players that don't get to play as much on Saturdays, backups, some of the freshmen, people like that. And he was really happy about that day as well. So yeah, man, he's in a good place right now. He's really excited about the way they've been practicing. So if that's the way he sounded tonight, that's exactly the way he was this afternoon.
Also in a good place right now, literally the honeymoon period of his life, is State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, somebody who can help you if you have insurance needs in Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Russ is as giant an Nole fan as he is an imposing figure. In a former life, I think he would have been a very well-compensated security guard or bouncer at the best club in New York. He didn't need to be because he got into the insurance game for you. But Russ is a large dude, and he's got a huge heart, and he's a huge Nole. And Ira, if you want support in the insurance game, Russ Voorhis is the guy to call because Noles support Noles, and that's what Russ Voorhis can do for you in 3 different states.
He's like a human security blanket, Tom, right? Instead of being a security guard or security, he is your security because what they provide there at State Farm Insurance. And his office is over there in Jacksonville. They've got 2 offices over in Jacksonville. If you're in that part of the state, stop on in, set up an appointment. You can get a consultation, find out about all the different coverages that are available, compare it to what you already have or what you want to have. But then also if you're outside of that area, if you're in Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, any insurance needs you have, be sure to call Russ. Go to russvoorhis.com, VORHIS.com. And again, tell them you heard about him on the Smash and Warchant.com. He's a big Nole. You guys are Noles. So you can also talk to him and his staff about Florida State sports because they love the Noles as well.
Going to get to more Noles talk in a second. A quick deviation. David says, Tom, surprised the Smash didn't start at 6. I believe in my Bucks, David. I think they're going to be fine. Of course, this was the one Monday night kickoff at 7 p.m. I trust them. As long as we have this thing, Ira, at the sign-off of the Smash within a score, we're going to be all right. Tampa Bay is going to be just fine. Let's see. Wesley says, yo, Tom and Ira, thoughts from both of you if we put 70-plus on the board on Saturday? See y'all soon. Go Noles. Yeah, Ira, I don't know what your prediction was for the previous game against East Texas A&M. I said 63, and they said, hold my beer. They went into the 70s. Interestingly enough, the Vegas over-under has this at, I believe, 55.5 points for the game. There could be some competing things going on here. Short week following. Maybe you get your guys off the field a little bit earlier because you don't have the full week of rest. What do you think? I know that you mentioned to Mike Norvell in a question today, too, that Kent State did look okay in its previous game. So where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I think for East Texas A&M, I was in the 50s. So I was not nearly as ambitious as you were. And should have been more ambitious than you were. No, it was,
yeah, neither of us were enough. We lost.
But yeah, I mean, listen, East Texas A&M's an FCS school. Kent State's an FBS school. It's a bigger school, more scholarships, more players, more bigger budget. So theoretically, they're going to be better than East Texas A&M. Having said that, they were terrible last year. They were one of the worst teams in the country, and their coach got fired earlier this year. So they have an interim head coach. It's kind of a weird situation. But they did, they had a lead late in that game at Buffalo, and Buffalo is not a bad football team. I mean, Buffalo is not a team that Florida State would be very concerned about playing, but they're not terrible. They're not one of the worst teams in college football. So for, Kent State to be winning that game, leading that game late, they gave up a late score within the last couple of minutes, I think, to lose it, says a lot. And Mike Norvell pointed out that the head coach at Buffalo is a guy that used to be on his staff. I think he was a special teams guy for them at Memphis. They have a couple other. Joe Bowen, I think, is on that staff, who used to coach here at Florida State. So they've got some legitimate coaches, and it'll be much more formidable, I would think, than East Texas A&M. Having said that, you like to think that Florida State's going to control the game on both sides and name their score, but maybe it is in the maybe it's in the 40s to 7 or 10 or something like that, as opposed to 73-7.
Well, it's not like they weren't afraid to go with changes and bring in backups quickly in the previous game. It was in the middle of the second quarter that these things happened. It evoked, I'm sure, images, Ira, of Hangman on a whiteboard on the sidelines from ages ago for Florida State. But I think in this instance, it might be more wholesale, even if the score isn't quite out of hand. If they feel that they're in command here, it's just the specter of that Friday night game right afterwards, I think, is part of the reason. And Marty, what's up, Noles fan, puts the number from the Hard Rock is minus 45.5 for Florida State, and the total is 55.5. I think that's got to be a factor here too. So we'll keep an eye on that. And David Bardstown says it may be September 15th, but I'm ready for Brocktober in 5 days. That's something we spoke about during the bye week. If you didn't check that out on Warchant TV, a freshman profile on Kevin Sperry talking about the quarterback rotation. Mike Norvell did speak on that a little bit more today, Ira, and echoed sentiments about, Brock Glenn was working through some physical ailments from preseason camp, and it was good to see him get back up to full speed in a game on the field against East Texas A&M. That sounds like that's still an issue that doesn't have a definitive answer yet, as though there still could be a battle that rages on maybe this weekend, and maybe there's some important reps this weekend that could influence a Virginia or a Miami decision.
Yeah, and I think on the depth chart it still said "or" for Kevin Sperry and Brock Glenn. So, I think Brock. I thought he looked pretty good when he went in, but Kevin looked really good when he went in. I mean, a couple of those throws we were really impressed by. We know what he can do as a runner, and he seemed very calm. And this is another opportunity if you get a chance, which you should, to get those guys in. This is kind of another good audition for those guys to see who would be the real number two if you got into a game. I still think in games that matter, you might go to Brock first. But the more good tape Kevin Sperry puts out there, there's a legitimate chance he ends up being the guy. I also think it may depend on the situation. I think as we talked about in that video, if it's a situation where you just need somebody to take care of the ball, maybe it's Brock Glenn because he's been in some big games before. Whereas if you need somebody to make plays, maybe it's Kevin Sperry because he is special when it comes to running the football as well as throwing the football. So I do think it's still up to be determined, but they're going to give these guys opportunities to keep showing what they could do and settle it on the field, I think.
As it pertains to the top of the depth chart at the quarterback position in Tommy Castellanos, there was a roundtable that if you haven't checked it out over at warchant.com, a staff roundtable in which Tommy comes up, the offense comes up, questions about the team come up. I noticed, Ira, you were not a part of the panel of answerers for the were you a believer? Be honest on Tommy Castellanos, Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell, and the marriage of that trio. I saw you put me as the lead answer on that one. I admit I was concerned. The day that Gus was hired, I thought, the day that Tommy Castellanos announced the transfer to Florida State, I said, well, it makes sense since Gus is here, but I don't know if I'm enthusiastic about it. Well, you should be enthusiastic. I was wrong through 2 games. How did you feel in the moment, and what do you think of this marriage so far and what it might be for the rest of the season?
I thought it made sense. I mean, I think we all agree with that. Like, if you were going to get Gus Malzahn, the idea that you're going to go get a Tommy Castellanos, okay, now you can understand what they're doing here. And I think the approach was, what's the quickest fix to get decent? I mean, I think that's the way many of us viewed it. That's certainly the way I viewed it. I didn't know that the high end would be potentially as high as it looks right now. I thought they would at least get to be decent. And after last year, decent sounded pretty good to me. So I was all for it, but I also didn't know how high the upside would be. I don't think anybody could have predicted. I don't know that Gus could have predicted that Tommy would be as effective as a passer as he looks to be right now. We'll see if that lasts. We'll see if he can be consistent with it. But the way he's throwing the football so far, the breakdown you and Dominic Robinson did, that people should go watch that. It's on the channel as well. Going down some of the third down plays, he's converted some with his legs, but also plenty with his arm. And it's cool to hear Dominic Robinson, a guy who played high-level receiver and defensive back, talk about Tommy's arm, not just the accuracy, but the power, the strength of his arm. That's not something people were saying 8 months ago about Tommy Castellanos. So, yeah, man, it's they've far exceeded everybody's expectations. I thought it was a good idea, but I didn't know the ceiling was anywhere near as high as it looks like it's going to be.
One thing I saw in one of those clips, it might have been the last one, the second to last one, because Dominic broke down a Tommy break in the pocket and getting a first down with his legs. It was called pass, but the athleticism taking over. Ira, it's the full field read. He's going through progressions on one half of the field and the other half of the field. For 2 reasons, I didn't think I would see much of that. Number one, Tommy's tape from before. Number 2, Gus Malzahn's offense. But look at that. It appears to me that if you're a receiver, if you're a quarterback, and you're looking at Gus Malzahn's offense, they're going to run more than they're going to pass. But there's a chance that this offense has some more pro-style concepts than I was willing to allow for. I looked at the run-pass splits. I looked at the read options, the RPOs, and that's fine. That's all made it to Sundays now. That's all a part of the NFL. But Tommy Castellanos going through a full field read against Alabama? Like, really? That's something that is quite impressive. He's not always the most accurate in the world, and that's still true. And his footwork was one thing that Dominic took issue with, but he said, yeah, the footwork's not great, but take a look at the velocity on that football.
Right.
I mean, they've got themselves a guy that if they run into a quarter or 3 out of 4 drives where they can't run the football and they might need to make a throw or two, I'm starting to believe more that he might be able to make a throw or two, Ira.
Well, and the other thing you need to have to be able to go through your progressions is an offensive line that can provide pass protection. And they seem to be comfortable with that in that game, even when empty sometimes, giving him a chance to really kind of get a lot of weapons out there and trusting those 5 offensive linemen. I thought the tackles did a great job. Gunner and Pettis did a really nice job with some of the one-on-ones that they had. And so that's a big positive. But, the other thing I think when you look at Tommy is he's very confident in what he can do with the ball. So there's nothing there's nothing Gus is going to ask him to do where Tommy's not very sure. You see some quarterbacks when you watch college football who are a little tentative or trying too hard, trying to do too much. Tommy seems totally at ease. The other thing I would say is, and to your point though, about perceptions of Gus's offense, I thought it was really interesting, and I think Matt Lasser and Michael Langston talked about it during the spring, well, especially during the summer, when they started getting these wide receiver commitments, that it was interesting that these receivers were so excited about playing in Gus's offense. I also thought it was interesting, and we had firsthand knowledge of how excited Deuce and Dominic Robinson were about playing in Gus's offense. I think there's a perception of what he does, and I think what he's able to show on film to recruits and to transfer prospects is, listen, man, you're going to get opportunities to catch the football, all the different routes you want to run. This is going to be a full offense that's going to prepare you for the NFL. And again, I can't speak to what he's done at all his stops and why the perceptions are the perceptions. But to your point, that's not what they're doing here. And it seems to be how he's sold a lot of these receivers on coming to Florida State, because they have a great receiver class right now, and they're still recruiting more of them.
They do have a really, really good. That was like the first position that went to a different place, Ira, in the summer. I was like, really? Receiver is going to be the thing that helps Florida State climb up the top 25 in terms of the 2026 cycle. It was impressive then, and now you're starting to see a little bit why now. And there's a note here from Jason in Facebook, says that pass that Deuce made a highlight catch on was perfect ball placement. Yeah, it's him or nobody. In that regard, it's Deuce is going to make a play or nobody's going to make a play. That's one thing that I've been very, very impressed with Tommy, just to put one more footnote on this discussion. And Ralph Spartanol says the same thing. Protect the ball, get in the hands of your playmakers. Generally speaking, Ira, I can't think of one pass so far where I'm thinking, oh, that could have been picked. Like, Tommy has been pretty careful. Not a ton of pass attempts so far, hasn't needed them. But those turnover-worthy passes that they grade out in Pro Football Focus, it hadn't been there for him. He's been very good about that part of it.
Well, and listen, man, if you think about what he said during the summer, and one of the things that got people mad was that it seemed like he was taking shots at Boston College. But I think you can make the argument that he was also maybe explaining why some of the things he did when he was at Boston College. Again, you look back at 2 years ago, the year where he had all the interceptions, because he didn't have that many interceptions last year. But 2 years ago, when he had all those interceptions, think about the fact that he probably did feel like he had to do everything, that he had to be Superman, that he had to force the ball in there because they didn't have a lot of weapons. They didn't have a lot of guys running wide open. And he's trying to make something happen with not a ton of great playmakers around him. Well, last year, again, Bill O'Brien comes in, they change the offense, and he cuts down on the turnovers. He's not as dynamic probably, but he at least cuts down the turnovers. And now he's in a situation where he's being asked to be a playmaker again, which is what he wants to do. That's why he came here. But also he is surrounded by weapons where you can just throw the ball up for grabs. You don't have to feel like you've got to fit everything into the tightest possible window, because you've got guys that can go make plays. And so, that may be the beginning of what he is. Now, I know there's certainly some people listening to this and certain people that have been watching the games thinking, okay, when's the other Tommy going to come? Like, when are we going to see the guy that turns it over? And that's to be determined if they're in a tight game or if they're in a game where they're behind and he feels like he has to make big plays. Then maybe that reverts itself. But right now, you got to think that maybe this is who he is when he's got really good players around him.
That's one thing I'm still waiting for, because the reputation, and I'm not talking about Tommy now, I'm talking about Gus. The reputation is, you'll see these moments where Gus scores an upset and you go, how the hell did you pull that off? And then the offense will be stagnant for a little bit and you go, how the hell, if you're capable of that, how are you capable of this kind of a lull? The question that can be mitigated, Ira, by, well, he was a head coach then. Now he's an offensive coordinator. This is all he's doing all day. And if Florida State can do that to Alabama, and then they have the maturity to do what they did in game 2, that's the hidden importance of game 2, is they're mature enough to take care of business. Man, this gets really fun really fast. And I don't know if you battle this like the fans do, like I do, Ira, but it's hard not to look at that Miami game a couple of weeks from now. We're supposed to be in the moment. You only get 12 of these, and we really should appreciate every moment because of what we went through last year. But do you find yourself looking ahead of that calendar too?
Yeah, I mean, more so not necessarily like counting down the minutes till they play, but more just thinking about how great that's going to be and just wanting these two teams to take care of business between now and then. Miami's not going to have a cakewalk with Florida. Certainly they're favored. They should win the game, but it's not necessarily a game they can't lose. So you want them to continue to hold serve, and you need Florida State to go win that Virginia game because again, we'll see how that game plays out. The good thing about that Miami game is if you do take care of business these next 2 weeks, whoever loses that game's not knocked out of anything. It's just one loss, and they're still in position to go do great things the rest of the season. So from that standpoint, it's not an all or nothing kind of game. It's not like the old days where you felt like, okay, if you lose this game, you're knocked out. That's not the case anymore, especially with the 12-team playoffs. So I love the fact that it's going to be a huge game. Maybe game day's there. It's going to be a huge atmosphere. 2 top 5 teams potentially, and whatever happens, the other team's not out of it. So I'm excited about it, but I'm not counting down the minutes to see what happens. I just want that moment to come. I want Florida State, Miami to have that moment again.
So I'll ask you a secondary question then in the same ilk. Does the game day conversation do anything for you, Ira? I mean, the choice to do Florida, Miami, and then does that influence game day coming to Tallahassee? Does that register for you at all? Or you're like, don't worry about it. They're probably going to be in prime time in terms of the kickoff anyway.
It crossed my mind at first, but I don't know. I was talking to a couple of friends, and there's still not like a lot of other good games that weekend. And especially with Florida being not good, because wasn't Florida, Texas was supposed to be the one that was a concern.
Florida, Texas was, honestly, the next best game right now is Alabama, Vandy. And that's because of Vandy being surprising this year. But I mean, if I'm saying that the next best one is Alabama, Vandy, it kind of stands on its own, right?
Right. And if Florida State and Miami are both in the top 5, and you're going to pick Alabama, Vandy, well, man, like, what are we doing here, ESPN? I mean, we know they don't like Florida State. Apparently, we see it based on some of the decisions they've made. But at the same time, they like money. And Florida State, Miami is box office. That would be a huge draw. So I think it'll be here if those two teams are undefeated. If it's not, it's not. I mean, what are we going to do? But that would just be cherry on top of what ESPN's been doing to Florida State for the last couple of years.
You're writing the memes for the Florida State fans if you do that in terms of being scared and all this and all that. But I think no matter what, even if they send game day somewhere else, maybe it's the weekend they do the random thing where they go to the nondescript game and they try to elevate that. It feels like it's almost a lock for the primetime window. They put Miami, Florida State on ABC when CBS had the SEC package, and they would have their premier game of the week. Like, they would put up Miami, Florida State against that, and they put Fowler and Herbie in the booth. And they wouldn't even be 2 good teams. I mean, I think if I had to put a money line on this, it's like minus 800 for Florida State, Miami to be the primetime game on ABC. We shall see. We'll be back here very shortly. We need to get in a 15-second word from our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Forrest. We're going to do that now and take your questions on the other side of the Monday Smash.
Contact Russ Forrest for an auto quote today.
Revving up the machine again here on a football Monday. Florida State is now playing football for the next 5 consecutive Saturdays. Looking forward to watching what comes next. Let's get your questions. Those come immediately right now. John Mowry says, do you think Matt Fryer's son will ever have serious playing time before he graduates? Camden Fryer, of course, was dealing with injuries over the last year. What do you think about handicapping Fryer's chances, Ira, to make some noise here at Florida State?
Yeah, I think he will. And, I think he got in some in the East Texas A&M game. I didn't go back and look at how many snaps. I'm pretty sure he got in some in that game as they emptied the benches. But, I think the thing about Cam Fryer was he, missed all of last year. He got here as a true freshman and then went through spring practice. He was an early enrollee. Then right before camp started, I think he had a procedure done, surgery before last fall. So he missed the entire year. Even when he came back in the spring, he wasn't 100% until at some point during the spring or maybe towards the end of the spring. So really this fall camp was his first real chance to kind of show what he could do. And I heard some good things about him out of practice. I wrote about it in one of our sources say things early on that, he impressed some people. So yeah, I think it's super early in his career. I do think he'll get opportunities. When those come, it's going to be a little, we'll see. Right now, I think they're leaning on the guys that they feel most comfortable, most confident in. But as those guys prove themselves, as younger guys get opportunities, then yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he got some at bats.
Feels like there's going to be an opportunity there because none of those second-year receivers who had a head start and didn't have health issues really have taken the mantle quite yet. LaWayne McCoy is now back up to full speed and going through full contact. That's a subplot for this weekend, I think, if we just want to stay in that position for a second, Iris, to see what LaWayne McCoy looks like. I'm assuming if he's cleared for full contact in practice, he's going to get some playing time this weekend against Kent State. Yeah,
and I thought it was interesting that Mike Norvell volunteered that they consider him as like their tier 1 wide receiver, like basically one of the top 3 or 4 guys, which is interesting to me because, LaWayne McCoy last fall, we were very impressed by him as a true freshman, but he didn't do much in games. And then I think he had some injuries he dealt with a little bit, then was limited, I think in the spring, and then was limited in preseason camp. So it's like, they view him as one of their top 3 or 4 wide receivers, but we haven't seen that yet, at least at the receiver position. He did return some punts last year, didn't really show a ton there. So that's going to be interesting to see what he looks like because, it sounds like he's ready to go, and they view him as in that top group. Well, now if he's up there with Boggs as that number 3 guy, yeah, man, maybe 3 and 4, 3A and 3B, that makes you feel a little bit better about that receiver position.
Jason asking about the offense says, how crazy is the organization of the tricky snaps and then the end-around handoffs? They are extremely buttoned up in this offense. Crazy. That's one of those unheralded things, and it might have been mentioned a little bit in the roundtable, Ira, but for the amount of time that they actually got to work together as a unit of 11, or in the case of a Danzy play, a 12th or a 13th guy, a specialist, it's unbelievably organized. There's a lot of nuance to some of these trick plays that Gus Malzahn's calling. It looks like they repped it since last year. Like it's been a part of the offense, and Gus Malzahn's been here a while. It is, frankly, crazy to see how buttoned up they are on those types of plays.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. One is you do have a lot of experienced guys, like guys that played a lot of college football, and Gus has talked about that a lot. From the offensive line standpoint, you got a bunch of 5th, 6th, 7th year seniors. But even at wide receiver, Squirrel White's a senior. Deuce is a junior. Gavin, the other
Blackwell.
Gavin.
Yep.
What's his last name?
Blackwell.
He's an older dude. They've got a bunch of guys that played a lot of college football. Now, when you're bringing in a freshman like Javen Boggs and some of those guys that are mature for their age, you're not having to stop and work on a lot of things with a lot of young guys. You're sprinkling in young guys. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it is I think Gus is a good teacher. I mean, I really think he knows what he needs, what he wants to get done. And he teaches that and doesn't spend a lot of time with a lot of other nonsense. Like, I don't think they've got the deepest playbook in the world. There's a lot of formations. They like to run things out of a lot of different formations and eye candy. And you do have to be organized and well rehearsed to do all that. But I think he does a good job of streamlining it, making it so guys can understand it, and then they feel confident doing it. And you're seeing that, man. I think, and that's the future, I think, of college football with these rosters changing. I think the days of the Jimbo Fisher offense where you've got, pages and pages and pages of concepts and all these things that you have to learn over time. I just don't think that works anymore. I think what Gus is doing is the right approach for this age of college football.
I totally agree. Yeah. Until there's collective bargaining and 3-year agreements of a kid out of high school, and that's the bulk of your offense. I don't think it's there. An interesting note too on Gavin Blackwell. I'll be looking at his snap count this weekend because he was banged up in camp. He came back to full speed, but Ira, he was with, I think, the third wave of wide receivers in the previous game against East Texas A&M. So the battle for that next wave of receivers after LaWayne McCoy, which you point out, Mike Norvell holds him in different standing. That's still an open battle. A lot of things to watch this weekend just to see how Florida State players position themselves for maybe a chance in a game down the line. It's like that Pitt game in 2023 where none of the receivers were healthy. Well, if something like that were to happen in a given week, kids are battling this weekend right now against Kent State in order to get those important reps. How about this one, says Tyler? University of Tennessee fans doing the Warchant during college game day this weekend. Did you catch that? Oddly enough, I was with some friends, shout out to Alicia and Sean in Orlando, and they have college game day on. I don't ever put it on, but I caught it for the best moment maybe of the year, Ira, because DeBoer's doing an interview on the field and the UT fans did the right thing.
I swear, man, there must have been something in the air, some karma where we knew to turn it on. I swear, I did not watch game day one time last year. I used to watch it religiously for 25, 30 years, however long it's been on, man. I have got every Saturday morning, even when they expanded it to 4 hours one year or whatever, like I would watch it all no matter how bad it got, even when I didn't like it. And I thought like they lost their way, I would still watch it until the snub. And I did not watch it once last year. And I don't think I watched it at all the first couple of weeks this year, but I did turn it on right at that time also. It was just amazing. And I retweeted the video from Kirk that they put on Herb Street's account. Who knows who runs Herb Street's Twitter? But it's that was cool. It wasn't just that they did it, but it was deafening. Like I think it was affecting what's his name is, he was Kalen DeBoer, he was talking like on the headset. Like I guess they can hear in there, and it sounded like it was bothering him as he was trying to talk.
Yeah, looked like he was trying to sort out what was going on. Is this like some sort of B-roll crowd noise thing? And frankly, so my friend is such a diehard Florida State fan that her ringtone is the Warchant. And so I thought, are you playing a video? Like that can't possibly be what's going on as DeBoer, because DeBoer was full screen. I'm like, that can't be. Somebody messed up somewhere. No, it was just, all right, Rocky Top. Sorry you weren't rewarded for your karma with a head coach who knew what the hell to do in crunch time, but that's okay. That's okay. We all had a great moment there, a shared moment together. First time since the late 90s that we could do that. Wilson says in the chat, what parts of this team remind you of 2013? What parts don't remind you of 2013? Got some things that spring to mind, good sir?
Well, I was going to say real quick back to the Tennessee thing. It was funny though when we shared those videos and stuff on social media that some people were like still mad about the College World Series with Tennessee. They're like, they can't get past Tony Vitello. They can't get past him to and then there were some people complaining about, just when they played in the past in football. So not everybody was fine with it, but yeah, it was cool to see. 2013, I would say the aggression, the physicality on defense. I thought that defense, LaMarcus Joyner, Telvin Smith, all those guys hit. And again, that's what, we talked about it in the roundtable. One of the questions I think in the roundtable is about Tony White and how what's impressed us about what they're doing on defense. And people can go, if you're a subscriber to Warchant, go to warchant.com. It's a really lengthy piece with comments from all of us on the staff talking about different aspects of the team. But with Tony White, that's the most impressive thing, just the physicality, the aggression, the hustle, the effort, and the intelligence. It seems like they're playing a smart brand of college football. And that reminded me of that 2013 team. Those guys were sharp, strong, and they came to hit. And I feel like those two things, there's probably things on a micro level, but on a macro level, that stands out to me.
Yeah, I agree. There was the video we played, the quote from Tony White about Earl Little, that he wants to take your soul out of your body.
Yeah.
That whole 2013 team was about that. It was about that. And related to that question, Samurai Noel says, do you think we have the toughness and want to enough to take on the bully role, to come with a mentality of we're here to knock your teeth in and take away your hopes and dreams? They did against Alabama. And they did. They did in game 2 in their own way. I think they're 2 for 2 in that regard. To the point that I'm expecting that this weekend. Doesn't mean it's 77-3, but isn't that who they are so far?
Let me ask you an offshoot question to that, and then we could talk about that more. what Alabama's doing since that game, is particularly with Ty Simpson's doing particularly that game, does that make you feel better about the Florida State defense? Or are you looking at just, oh, that was the first game and, now he's calmed down, he's found his sea legs?
I know what the numbers say, what Ty Simpson is doing. I haven't seen it. I didn't watch that game in the 12 o'clock window. I just had Georgia Tech and Clemson on. I'm still skeptical. I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not sure. Maybe Wisconsin's that bad. And maybe
that's very possible.
So, but it could be, because the numbers are very impressive. And I know our own Jeff Cameron, he was saying it on the air today. He's like, dude, go take a look at some of the throws he made, because he does appear to be a different guy. Maybe Grubb and he had to sit down and maybe they found something. And through the conflict of the Florida State loss, they found something that they could do together. That's entirely possible. If Alabama kicks butt this year, that does make me feel better, because it wasn't just on Ty Simpson that they failed that day. It wasn't just a quarterback cost them the game that Lagway cost Florida the LSU game this past weekend in Baton Rouge. It wasn't that stark. Florida State bullied them everywhere on the field. Outside of a muff punt, that game's over a lot earlier as well. So to answer your question, no. I don't feel any worse. I'm not qualifying what I saw in the Alabama game like that. I'm going to be impressed about that no matter what Alabama does, good or bad, moving forward.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It may make you feel better about it, because they affected that offense in such a way. They affected the receivers and tight ends. They affected their offensive line, and they affected the quarterback by the way they were playing. So yeah, man, I got to give them a lot of credit for that. The bullying thing is interesting to me, and I think it'll be interesting in the Miami game, particularly because that's what Miami's been doing. That's what Miami wants to do. Now, what's interesting, there are people that will say this. I'm not saying I say it, Tom. There are people that would tell you that Miami will bully teams that will let them bully them, but then back down if somebody else bullies them. And so that'll be interesting to see, man. Like I believe in what these guys are about. Like, I believe in this Florida. This does not seem like false bravado. It doesn't feel like bullying on weaker people. Again, what they did against Alabama, I think speaks to, just the way those guys carry themselves. Mandrell Desir, Darryl Desir, it's the way Darryl Jackson's been playing, Justin Cryer, Elijah Herring. He's a dude. Like, I feel like that's who these guys are, but they'll be going up against some dudes who want to do the same thing. So that's going to be an interesting subplot to that game, that not necessarily who's just a better football team, but who kind of imposes their will between Florida State and Miami.
Well, it might be the first of multiple matchups against Miami. You could put it that way. I'm here for the Miami slander, passive aggressive as it might be. And I know you're not saying it. Somebody else might be saying that they bully teams that are willing to be bullied. When Notre Dame got it together in the second half of that first game of the season, Miami looked a little bit different than it did in the first half. When Notre Dame appeared to have no identity whatsoever on offense or defense, they looked like they might be one of the worst teams in the country. I think USF was beleaguered. So I'm qualifying a couple of those Miami results. I'm doing it. I don't believe in them to the point that some do. I listened to a lot of college football national coverage yesterday on the drive home from Orlando, and I heard a lot of, well, are they not the best team in the country? I think Miami's legitimately good, but Florida State has this thing about them, Ira, which does remind me, Wilson, he asked the question for 2013. They just go to this level that's uncomfortable for the opponent, and they did it to two different kinds, which tells me that even when they go to Virginia 2 Fridays from now, I just can't wait to see what they do, because people, when they get hit like that, the decisions they make, the hesitation, all of that stuff, the alligator arms, you can affect people that way, and Florida State's done that this year.
And I didn't mention the one guy, Earl Little, who is really the tip of the spear of that whole thing. And, it's funny. Michael went over to Madison County and watched Madison County play Lake City, Columbia. Brian Allen is now the head coach, or was the head coach at Lake City, Columbia, left for a little bit. Now he's back the head coach of Lake City, Columbia, former FSU All ACC linebacker on the 99, 2000, that era football teams. But he just raved about her a little, talking to Michael. We had a story up on the website over the weekend. Michael also talked to Timmy Jernigan. Timmy Jernigan's actually on the coaching staff there, which is cool. And Timmy Jernigan talked about, he's like, Earl Little could play with us. Like that, those defenses when he was here in the 2013, those defenses. So the former players, the guys that were on great Florida State teams, love Earl Little. So it's not just like, oh, he looks good. Like we've seen the comments on Twitter, Stanford Samuels, a bunch of guys have been tweeting about Earl Little. So yeah, man, like I think that's legit. I don't think that's going to disappear if they play against a better opponent. And so, yeah, you got to manage emotions. That's a big part of it too. And, you can make you can make the rationalization that Miami played USF after 2 physical games where they were a little bit worn down. And you can make a case that Florida State got Alabama when Alabama was unexpected. Like Alabama could not have expected Florida State to come out of the gate the way they did after last season. So maybe there's a little bit of both. Maybe you can explain away some of what both teams have done. But the great thing is, man, they're going to get a chance to see what's up in a couple of weeks.
I'm not hearing any of that. No, I'm kidding you about the Florida State side of it. Timothy asks in the chat, he says, where has Omar Graham Jr. been? I know he's starting, but I feel like I haven't heard his name much. And just to give you a snap count, against Alabama, he was out there for 22 snaps. For East Texas A&M, he was out there for 17 snaps. So most certainly he's in the rotation, Ira. But any thoughts on Omar Graham?
Yeah, I just think he's in that third linebacker, that kind of like the jack linebacker role, where he's not necessarily always on the field. It depends on what defense they're running. They're going to play. It was funny. We joked about the preseason depth chart Florida State put out had 12 guys on offense. Well, now they're putting 12 guys on defense, and they're putting 4 D linemen, the 3 linebackers, and then 5 DBs. Maybe 13 guys on that depth chart. I can't remember exactly, but they definitely had 4 defensive linemen on there, and 2 ends and a nose guard and a defensive tackle. And so it depends on what they're, Omar's going to be the first linebacker, I think, off the field. If they go with the 2 linebackers, and if they go with a defensive end as that jack linebacker, the different things they can do. So his snaps aren't going to be as high as the other guys, but I mean, I think he's got a role, and I think he's going to have a big role. I think he's going to be more of a kind of a guy that's situational and like that pass rushing role. That's something they really want to use him as. But they, in the East Texas A&M game, there weren't a lot of opportunities for drop back passes. That wasn't going to be a game like that. So we'll see in some of these other games.
Brett asks, and I love this question because it means Florida State is succeeding. He says, has Georgia Tech essentially punched their ticket to Charlotte? They have a Louisville type schedule. And the ACC is such that, Ira, with the amount of teams that they have, some programs do kind of skirt. And North Carolina is one of those. They've got now Chapel Bill's got problems, but if you just look at their schedule relative to, say, Florida State's, you're like, really? Their only game of huge substances against Clemson, which might be gettable for Chapel Bill now. Georgia Tech is pretty easy the rest of the way. And Cal's, don't look now, but Cal might have a quarterback on the West Coast. I don't know if you stayed up late to watch that game against Minnesota or see what he's done so far. Cal's schedule ain't exactly anything to write home about either. So I love these questions, Ira, because it means now everybody's starting to standings check and schedule watch to make sure that Florida State has postseason aspirations fulfilled and a shot at the playoff fulfilled.
Yeah, I think SMU last year had a really easy schedule, which helped them get to the championship game. So, yeah, that's definitely a factor. I think when you look at I fell asleep, I think, in the second quarter of that Minnesota game. I wish I would have stayed up, though, because I would have liked to have seen my guy at Minnesota lose. But, maybe we'll see if he shows up on the coach speak this week. But, I think Georgia Tech makes sense. The reason I doubt them is because I just don't think there's any way Haynes King is going to be held. You watch the way he plays, man. It's makes me uncomfortable. I'll be honest with you. Like, I love Brent Key is like hugging the guy after the game to do the interview and how much he loves him like a son and all this. And it's like, yeah, man, I don't think you do your son like that. I mean, that kid's just a battering ram, and he's not built like Cam Newton. So I don't know, man. I don't know how that guy gets through a whole season. We'll see if he does. Maybe they just rest him in the games they don't need him in. But I just think they go as he goes. And so if he gets banged up, I think their season could get derailed pretty quickly.
You're like, don't hug him too hard. You're going to break him. He's just a breath away from being broken. I'm just like, Haynes, your parents, are they watching? Like, what, this man is he's just sending you into a meat grinder every week. But it's working. Georgia Tech's remaining ACC schedule, I'll rapid fire it, is as follows: Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Duke, Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, and Pitt. So there it is. Of all those things, it's that sounds relatively doable, assuming your quarterback stays healthy. We do have a text in. That's right, a text from our guy Russ Forrest, who says, I actually was a bouncer. So there you go. Once upon a time, he's covered people in all types of ways. Safety at the door, safety with insurance. Any thoughts, Ira, before we sign off this week on the Monday Smash? We'll get to promotions here in just a second. I know you're going to talk about it on Coach Speak, but I know you're a sucker for a good cross debate, and I'll put that in quotations, cross debate between a head coach and a reporter. Brian Kelly and what's his name from the radio station in Baton Rouge. What do you think?
So it was a terrible first question of a press conference. And I like making fun of Brian Kelly as much as the next guy, and he went too far because he turned it into a rant against the assembled media and maybe the LSU fan base when he's like, you guys are just spoiled. And it was like, dude, settle the hell down. That was the line he crossed. He should not have, and he had to apologize today. But man, you can't make that the first question. And that's one of the challenges to these press conferences. And honestly, the reason sometimes I try to ask the first question is because I feel like sometimes that sets the tone in a press conference. And if you're in a room full of 20 people, and this is something that, it's inside baseball, but it might help people as you're watching these press conferences. If there's 20 reporters and the first question is something that the subject feels like is attacking them, like, for example, it's a guy who had a bad play in a game 2 weeks earlier, and the first question's about that. Well, now he's going to be defensive, and he's going to put up a kind of a barrier. Now everybody else that follows that question has to deal with that barrier that you put up. So I feel like there's a need with the first question, maybe the first question or two, maybe even the first question or two, to kind of be not a softball, but just kind of let the guy talk about winning the game. They beat Florida. It was an emotional game. Give him an opportunity to talk about that, then ask him about the offense. But to ask him right off the bat, man, what happened to your offense? I mean, it was just crazy.
It was. Now, Kelly could have skirted it so easily and said, I look forward to talking about that in our Monday press conference, but if we have questions tonight about the big win we just got,
he could have laughed at him. That's what I think he could have and should have done, is like, really, man? Really? That's what you're going to ask me? I'll talk, like you said, I'll talk about that later. I'm going to talk about what we did to win a huge game in front of a sold out crowd and whatever.
I will say, somebody who's been in a lot of those press rooms, the question itself made me cringe, and then the retort after Brian Kelly challenged him was worse. I think that person should be stripped of a credential, and I mean it. When he says, so the first question was about, it was just the offensive struggles, right? He said something to the effect of, well, what in the world is going on with your running game? Or what in the world is going on with your third down offense? Right. He sounded like an offended person who might be at Bowden's. He said, hey, Mike, we love you. He might sound like Mike Tomkowitz at a coach's call-in show. That was not a question. So he gets challenged, and he went Jerry Seinfeld on him. Well, what in the world is wrong with your – I mean, come on, man. You got to retort stronger than that. And that doesn't help anybody in the room when now you're getting into a back and forth with a head coach. I figured that might be your take, that the first question could have been chosen a little bit better, but that guy turned into defensive, emotional fan dude way too quick.
And you don't know if it's that or if it's sometimes TV people are looking for that soundbite. And I'm not sure if it's TV or radio guy, whatever it was. Sometimes they're looking for those moments because it plays well on their broadcast. So, or it could have been just a homer who was frustrated, either way. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Brian Kelly went to accusing everybody of being spoiled and then having to apologize about it today, and the way he worded his apology, he said something along the lines of, I've got to hold myself to a higher standard when I deal with the media. It wasn't like the way it sounded to me is that that's what somebody told him he needed to say. So I don't think things are going great there right now, even though they're winning. That was a nice win. They've had a couple nice wins. The win over Clemson was certainly nice. The questions about how Brian Kelly's just that relationship in Baton Rouge gives you an insight that maybe it's not great.
Not a surprise at all with Brian Kelly. There's going to be more of that this week on Coach Speak, which you can find by searching, I think it's at Coach-Speak on YouTube. Give a little promo love to that. It's on its own independent channel doing awesome right now through the first 2 episodes in that iteration. I'm sure Brian Kelly's going to come up. And director Nick says behind the scenes, Ira, just a candidate. Apparently Billy Napier and a reporter had it back and forth today too in Gainesville. So I didn't see that, but that might make the cut. Dudes are getting fired. What is this, November? It's crazy, Ira. This is nuts. There's a lot of going on with conflict and coaches right now.
This was a big weekend. Bill O'Brien, by the way, not to give too much away of Coach Speak, but I was looking at a couple clips today. Bill O'Brien was awesome last week. He's awesome again this week. Bill O'Brien, he may knock off Dave Aranda on that show as the star of that show because and listen, here's another one. It's like Tommy Castellanos is just getting payback. He went after Alabama. He backed it up. He talked about the not having enough athletes over at Boston College. He's backed that up. And Bill O'Brien, watch his press conference. First of all, they're not having a lot of success. They just lost to Stanford. And again, he and Tommy had their big blow up. Apparently he said that after the game, he basically told the players, if you're not happy here, you can leave. So things may not be going great there in Chestnut Hill for Bill O'Brien. And again, when Tommy Castellanos left the team, the perception was, well, he's the bad egg. Bill O'Brien clearly is former NFL head coach. You should follow his lead. Well, it doesn't seem to be going great there either. So Tommy, man, just comes up smelling like a rose, I think.
Yeah, maybe Tommy's just been telling the truth the whole time, and we need to wake up to it. The one thing I will say, I'll defend myself on that one. As an NFL fan, when the Tommy report came out, I was quick to say, hey, man, it takes 2 to tango. And the one that was leading that dance might have been Bill O'Brien because he has a reputation for being a world-class #a-hole. So that was potentially not surprising at all. Coming up this week on Warchant.com and Warchant TV, a ton of content. Florida State's game week. It's back. Week 3, game 3, I should say, of the season. We've got player and coach interviews tomorrow. That's if you want the newsy side of things. That's at around lunchtime tomorrow and lunchtime on Wednesday. Wake Up Warchant is available all week. Seminole headlines available this week. Not entirely sure what the full itinerary is for the rest of the shows, other than to say we've got the Corner Pocket Friday night. We've got Hotel Indigo on Saturday. That's at 1 p.m. Ira, all the content on the website is plentiful and bountiful as Florida State gets ramped up here again.
Yeah, it is. I just wanted to touch on one thing real quick. It was great to hear the update today from Mike Norvell about Ethan Pritchard, the Florida State linebacker who was shot a couple weeks ago. It has been bleak. I mean, there has not been a lot of positive developments since he was hospitalized. He's been in critical but stable condition. And, hearing Mike Norvell and the way he talked about Ethan opening his eyes yesterday in the hospital bed for the first time since the shooting happened was awesome. The way he said the team reacted when he came back and told the team the good news, and then Mike Norvell was able to go over and see Ethan again today. Again, we can't say it enough that it's a long road, man. This guy's got a long road ahead of him. He and his family, and everybody's prayers and well wishes are with him. But maybe those prayers and well wishes are paying off because that was a big step. It was the first step, but it was a big one. And certainly praying for Ethan, and hopefully there's a lot more positive news going forward.
If you want to see Mike Norvell's full comments on that, check out today's press conference and scrub to about the last 2 to 3 minutes of it. You'll hear Ira's voice because you asked a twofer. It starts with the Kent State question and then followed by what ended up being the closing question, which was for an update on Ethan Pritchard. So if you want to see Mike's full comments, some powerful stuff in there. These are the last couple of minutes of the video. As for also features on the site this week, good sir, what can folks expect?
Yeah, but we'll actually Kent State's enough of an opponent that we'll have some preview stuff looking at Kent State and kind of what that matchup looks like. We'll also have more stuff on Tony White. He's the story of the week right now. I think he's with all the attention with UCLA and what he's done so far for Florida State. We've got some stuff coming on Tony White and kind of what he's done for Florida State, but also his future as a coach. I mentioned earlier from that earlier interview. So we'll have some of that coming as well. And then, just normal, the Warchant reports coming, just all the normal coverage of a game week. Glad to be back into a game week this week.
It's been a weird start to the schedule, but when you're 2-0, you just smile about all of it. And like last weekend, let the chaos unfold around you. Maybe there's more this weekend, Ira. Florida State plays in the middle of the day, but college football is always good for one or two where you go, no way, that is not happening. And Florida State likely is not going to be a part of this at all this weekend. So kick back, relax, head over to warchant.com, sign up today for $1 for your first week. You will also be bonused a full year of a membership to The Athletic. Round out your sports website portfolio. Start it with us at warchant.com. For Director Nick Carlisle behind the scenes, for Ira Schofel, the managing editor of warchant.com, for our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, bouncer emeritus as he is. My name is Tom Lang, and I'll give you my best Gene Deckerhoff as we sign off tonight. Go Bucks! Let's see if we can't get a win on a Monday night. Good night, everybody.